Are you watching closely?
The Prestige is a 2006 film directed by Christopher Nolan, or Tough No. Shout out to Mikey Newman and bringing the hashtag back, a man who is responsible for two of my favourite films of all time. This and The Dark Knight. Now, every magic trick, like this film, has three parts. The Pledge, the Turn, the Prestige. So let's start with part one. The story centres around our two main characters, Robert Angier and Alfred Borden. I would say our protagonist and antagonist, but it's impossible to tell which one is really which. Both men are presented throughout the film as morally grey. Neither one is evil or good per se, so we as the audience are conflicted about which one, if either, to root for. This is helped along by the costumes and the cinematography. Lots of blacks and whites and greys and earthy tones set the mood for the film and ground our characters in this morally ambiguous story. The lighting adds to this, with most of the scenes being shot with natural light on the street or streaming through windows, just like in Nolan's early work, to give us this sense of being with these characters whilst making them seem real and gritty. As with so many of Nolan's films, the concept of time is utilised to his advantage, but this is probably the best use of this effect yet. The story is self-aware and plays on this idea that we all have this inherent knowledge of story structure. Just like with a magic trick, we know how a story should play out. What Nolan does is he takes this typical three-act structure and twists it. More on that later. In typical Tofno fashion, our first scene shows us the events that occur about 80% of the way into the film, with Angier performing a trick and falling into a tank of water as Borden watches on. The narration comes courtesy of Cutter, Michael Caine, as he describes the three stages of a magic trick to a young girl. Framing device number 1. We then see that this is a story being told by Cutter at the trial of Borden as he stands accused of murdering Angier. Framing devices 2 and 3, which make this a story within a story within a story, come courtesy of the two diaries, with each man reading the others as they chronicle their battle. Borden reads of Angier's travels to Colorado as he seeks out a machine to replicate his signature trick of the transported man by attempting to gain an audience with the one and only Nikola Tesla. Guided by Borden's diary, in which he has written all of his secrets and encrypted them with a cipher. This is how we view the majority of the film from this point on. From their time as plants in the audience of a senior magician, to the moment Borden is sat in his cell awaiting the arrival of an employee of a lord who wants to purchase his tricks, we view the world through the words of one of these two men. The diaries represent the pledge and the turn. After that, well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. 12 minutes in, we get our first scene chronologically as the two men assist Milton with his act. The difference between the two is instantly apparent, with Angier having more of a flair for showmanship, and Borden being the more gruff and angsty of the pair. By the way, let's just appreciate this sequence, which was shot 360, lit from above, and incorporates the whole set.
Hey, Cutter, where's he from?
Where are you from?
I think one of the things this film does so well is introduce its themes early and then keeps them repeating, either visually or verbally, and this is the case with this scene in which the two men go to watch Chung Ling Soo, a man who has dedicated his entire life to his act, whose life, in fact, is his act.
This is the trick. This is a performance.
An apparently frail old man who shuffles about on stage and keeps up that lie every time he's in public, all so that he can keep the secret of his best trick under wraps. This is the film's most important question. How far will one go to perfect and protect their craft? How much of your personal life are you willing to sacrifice to be a success?
They'll beg you and they'll flatter you for the secret, but as soon as you give it up, you'll be nothing to them.
The other constant we have is this idea of duplicity. Pairs of canaries, the many hats in the titles, and the nephew of Borden's eventual wife Sarah seeing through the trick in which one of the birds is killed and its brother presented as a duplicate. Unfortunately, death is another thread that runs right the way through this film, along with anger, hatred, and revenge.
You don't know?
And all of this is set in motion by the death of Angier's wife during a routine show, apparently as a result of Borden tying a knot he had been warned about prior. This lights the fuse on the rivalry between the two magicians, a battle that spirals out of control as they try to top each other. It's during this fight, to better their acts and each other, that we are introduced to Borden's greatest trick, the transported man. The second act, the turn, the part where the audience, and in this case Angier, looks for a solution but never finds it because they're not really looking. Having seen the transported man for himself multiple times and backed up by his new assistant and love interest Olivia, that the same man does indeed go into and come out of each box, Angier sets out to replicate it.
He wears padded gloves to hide his damaged fingers, but if you look closely you can tell.
A journey that would eventually lead him to Tesla, played by
motherfucking David Bowie.
Can I just point out that the only man in this movie who can produce real, actual magic is played by one of the most magical men to have ever lived, and that he more than holds his own in this film. Just round of applause for David Bowie, everyone. We once again get our themes popping up. Sacrifice coming into play as Angier sends Olivia away to steal Borden's secrets, only for her to begin an affair with him and lead him to Angier's double, thus ruining his act once again.
The Great Danton!
The duplicity of the hats and the cats, duplicated by Tesla's machine, and the growing feeling that Borden has a sort of split personality, summed up by his wife.
I love you.
Not today.
What?
Well, some days it's not true, and today you don't mean it.
Much of the action in this act is one-upmanship, as the two regularly invade each other's shows and lives, getting the upper hand for a minute before the other claws it back, as we see when both diaries have their own shock endings. Borden's revealing that leading Angier to Tesla was simply a ploy to remove him from London for a considerable amount of time, and Angier's refuting that whilst also predicting his own death and Borden's arrest. From this moment on, it's the endgame. The prestige is centred around Angier's final show, one that he earns through Tesla's machine, and one that he knows Borden won't be able to resist. The trick is executed perfectly, he falls into the tank locks, he dies, and Borden is arrested and charged for murder and then hanged. But not before Angier is revealed to be alive and well with the title of Lord Calderlow, the man who has purchased Borden's tricks and is now the adoptive father of his daughter. One final bout of one-upmanship before Borden meets his end. The final scene ties all of our strings together, as Borden's shady associate shoots Angier, who reveals himself to be Borden's identical twin. The big secret that Angier had been searching for this whole time had been a body double, but taken to such extreme lengths. Two men living one life, unbeknownst to everyone, even their wife and mistress and us. Angier's version of the transported man is also revealed. Each night he would step into the machine and create a clone of himself. One man is presented as the prestige up in the gods, and the other disposed of in a tank of water, with Angier never knowing which one he would be. In the end, we're left questioning Cutter's role as he finishes showing Borden's daughter the bird trick, and then hands her over to Borden himself. As I said, we have three main themes in this film. One is duplicity, represented most prominently by Borden, who is literally two men, and who is most closely associated with the bird trick. The next is death, which is Angier's role. He is the one who loses his wife, and who then uses an act based on the death of multiple versions of himself to sentence Borden to be killed by hanging. Our final theme, encapsulated by both men, is obsession and revenge and sacrifice.
I can recognize an obsession. No good will come of it.
How far would you go to be the best? How much would you sacrifice for your act? For Borden, the answer was everything. Keeping the fact that he was two people playing one man a secret meant staying silent as his marriage fell apart and his wife committing suicide upon discovering the truth. And then losing Olivia as she finds his words cruel and cold. For Angier, it meant losing his humanity and becoming a serial killer as he disposes of body after body each night so that his act can continue. It meant losing Olivia by using her as an object in his climb to the top and giving up his morals by finally getting his hands dirty. Going back to what I was talking about earlier, this idea of time and space and bouncing around the two, just like a man entering one box and then exiting another a second later, is utilised by Nolan in his storytelling. The magic of filmmaking is being able to transport the viewer to a completely new location and time and have them immediately understand what is going on. Nolan plays on this by layering his visuals and his dialogue in a way that tricks our minds into aligning events in a way that isn't necessarily true, making it almost impossible for us to guess the ending, while making it painfully obvious upon second viewing. Seriously, go back and watch this multiple times, because the clues are all there.
A baby.
Oh my God. We should have told Fallon.
How can he not know?
Well, some days it's not true, and today you don't mean it. I don't understand how it can be pleasing again. It's as bad as the day it happened.
Cutter was right, he uses a double.
Of course Borden said that.
Didn't say anything. I've seen things. Makeup, glasses, wigs. We don't use any of it for the show, but I've seen it hidden backstage.
All the time, Olivia. That's who he is. That's what it takes. He lives his act.
What is it, Freddie?
Don't call me that.
You even have Cutter spell it out for you, that when something in this film disappears, it will be brought back again. But you dismiss all of those clues at first, and I guess the most rational explanation is that Christopher Nolan is some kind of movie-making magician that combines science and magic to amaze and dazzle an audience that aren't actually looking for the answers during the Plague and the Turn because they want the prestige to be the thing that wows them. Hey, wait. I mentioned at the beginning of the video that it was dedicated to the man in the box, and in this case, it isn't actually anyone in the movie. Christopher Nolan has been talked about a lot in this piece, and for good reason, but so much credit for the screenplay and much of Nolan's success as a filmmaker has to go to his brother Jonathan. If you mention Christopher Nolan to anyone, they'll reel off films like Batman, The Prestige, Interstellar, Inception, but the same can't be said for his brother. The theme of duality, being the man under the stage, taking the applause, who the main act depends on. That's all Jonathan, baby. So this video is dedicated to him, the man in the box, who deserves more credit than he gets. Let's just hope that Christopher never loses any fingers, because ouch!